If you don't, it's 35192. AlanCoxShow.com. And that iHeartRadio app. When it works, boy, it is fantastic and so fun to use. And have I mentioned free? Won't cost you one thin guilder to use that iHeartRadio app. Cavaliers play tonight. If you are not near the radio, you can listen to that on the app as well. Cavs in New York to play the Knicks, who just lost one of their radio guys. These guys that can't keep it together, they are first and foremost job creators when they get, they screw themselves out of a pretty plum gig and then somebody else is going to come in and do it. Remember a name, Hubie Brown? Remember Hubie Brown? This guy, he's like in the Basketball Hall of Fame.
He's like 90 years old.
Yeah. This is his son.
Okay.
Hubie Brown's in, he used to coach the Hawks, I think, or something in the 70s. It was a big deal, though.
No, I think his last coaching gig was Memphis.
Yeah, Grizzlies in the early aughts. Brendan Brown was fired by the MSG networks. He was one of the Knicks play-by-play guys. And I guess a handful of people had accused him of verbal harassment. And he lost his gig. So they're going to have a rotating cast of characters doing the Knicks games. Yeah, he hasn't put out any kind of statement. Because why say anything, man? I mean, just keep your mouth shut, and who knows? What's the old saying? You can stay quiet and let the world assume you're a fool, or open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Even I knew that one.
What does that mean? Uh-oh. Better say something or everybody's going to think you're dumb. Takes one to know one. Classic Simpsons moment.
Even Poundcake knew that one.
I've heard it before.
Yeah, it's a good line. I don't know who to attribute it to, but it's great. So, Brendan Brown, who was play-by-play there with Ed Cohen on the Knicks radio network, is out of a gig now. Along with, who's the rest of his team? Monica McNutt.
She got it.
Alan Hahn, John Wallace, and Wally Shearback are all going to be filling in here. So there you go. He's been with the Knicks radio team since 2008. And you have to figure organizations, I was going to say especially sports, probably not especially sports, but more now maybe than they used to. Even sports organizations now, they don't dick around. Because these gigs are few and far between, and so they're like, we don't need the hassle. Don't need it. We'll bring somebody else in, pay them way less. There's always somebody else who will do it better and cheaper.
There's
somebody looking for their come-up.
That's happening with Adult Swim. They just announced that they're getting rid of Justin Roiland, who was one of the creators of Rick and Morty. He does the voice of Rick and Morty, and they're like, yeah, we're going to find someone else because you were grooming 16-year-old girls.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't watch that show, so I didn't know what the story was on that.
Yeah, it was pretty gross
So
stuff.
he's the creator of the show?
Co-creator, yeah.
Wow.
With Dan Harmon.
Domestic abuse charges.
So there's the domestic abuse charges, and that led to a bunch of people sharing DMs that he was sending them that were pretty gross. And some of the girls were 15, 16 years old when he was messaging them, being like, oh, I'm so drunk right now. What is he doing right now? Like, just.
What's drunk?
Oh, this guy does a handful of cartoons.
Yeah.
He does Solar Opposites.
Yeah.
Which, man, I cannot get into that. That is a singularly laughless cartoon from what I've seen. And then Koala Man just premiered on Hulu.
I haven't seen Koala Man. I don't mind Solar Opposites, but.
Can't get into it.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. You got to wonder, like, at what point do you go, hey, man, I'm the guy behind Rick and Morty, and then you get a full head of steam, or were you just a dick before that?
It's crazy popular. That show was huge.
Right, but not with 16-year-old girls, is it?
No, with 16-year-old, but, like, you don't have to.
I thought Dan Harmon created Rick and Morty.
He was the co-creator.
Oh, they
See,
both created.
yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's
Rick and Morty to
it's
me,
a popular show.
but isn't it mostly popular with dudes?
I mean, it's got people like girls like it too. I mean, it's
Huh.
not a
They might watch
not
it
nearly
with their,
as many. It's
with
probably
their older brothers or
skews.
something.
Yeah, it skews more towards women, but I think there's a lot of still. I mean, when it's that popular of a show, even if 20% of your audience is female, that's still millions and millions of people.
Yeah. And so he was DM 16-year-old girls.
Yeah.
Boy,
Pretty cool
imagine
stuff.
that. Hey, you're cute. I do Rick and Morty.
Well, he was.
I
Like,
mean, even if
he
you
would,
like
like,
the
kinda
show,
act like he
do you
was-
care?
he was kind of like mentoring, like fake mentoring
Oh,
Trying
boy.
to
this one girl,
groom.
and
I
he
see.
his nickname for her was Jailbait. So like he knew
Oh.
he was playing with fire, and like she released a lot of direct messages that he sent, and he's like, "Hey, my girlfriend and I are gonna be in town. You should come hang out with us." Blah blah, like just weird stuff.
Wow. Oh, so he wasn't a married guy.
No,
Okay.
no, this is his girlfriend that he's the domestic abuse is. It was domestic abuse, and I think he was holding her, or like kidnapping in a way because he wasn't letting her leave the house, stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus, what is up with these dudes? I mean, seriously. No wonder that 23-year-old girl is freaking out over dudes hitting her up.
Yeah.
She's got a double whammy.
She's got to go to Wales to find a normal one.
Oh, boy. I don't understand. Just make the cartoons. Are you like bored making cartoons?
No, they
Didn't
want
they
it
just
all.
didn't they just sell some massive Rick and Morty order to
Well,
Adult
they-
Swim or something?
In 2018, they signed like a 70 episode
Yeah.
order, and they're like halfway, not even halfway through it.
Well, they might have some in the can. It just might not be.
No, but I'm saying like it's basically they got renewed for 7 seasons, which is insane.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
So what happens when something like this happens? Do they, because they have to, otherwise they're going to get sued if they don't provide the episode. So do they just get somebody else and
That's what they did. They
Force him to
recast.
sell?
They're going to
Okay.
recast them as they're going to get new people to do, because all over TikTok there's people that can do Rick and Morty's voice, so that they'll find someone that can sound
Yeah.
enough like them.
Hey, send me your best Rick and Morty.
Mm-hmm.
We'll pay you $100 an episode. Dan Harmon will run away with all the money. They'll be like, yeah, we'll give you, we'll pay you a little bit.
And Dan Harmon's had his troubles too, because he was
Yeah.
being real, not anything like this,
Not
but
creepy, but
he was being pretty abusive to some people on his staff and was harassing someone. So like,
I
he-
was
so people
thinking,
don't-
he had to like do a whole mea culpa too. So-
Gwen and I were talking about this because, she came from television and film. She used to be a producer on Jerry Springer and on Judge Mathis, those kinds of shows. And I got my start producing morning radio in Chicago, and you got screamed at all the time. All you got was screamed at. And now, again, she and I are 10 years apart, but things didn't change that much in that amount of time in the business. And it's so utterly foreign now. People getting into this now have no idea what it used to be like, and it was just baked into the cake. You were like, well, this is what toughens me up. And it wasn't like it was personal comments. They weren't like insulting you or anything, but it was like high pressure situations, things that need to be created and produced and put on, things that just a very, very high pressure situation.
Are you?
I mean, Gwen
referencing-
was working like 90 hours a week when I first met her when she was working with Jerry Springer. It was like, am I what?
Are you referencing Dan Harmon being mean to staff?
I think the
that
rap-
staff nowadays don't really get it.
Yeah, the rap
Yeah.
on Dan Harmon was that he was just a real taskmaster. And
But-
you simply, in this day and age, you could not get away with that anymore. And I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who, I'm saying to me, that was never a big deal. That's just what it was. That's how you got a thick skin. Your boss throwing carts at your head to get you to pay attention or whatever it was, right? Whatever you did, it wasn't good enough. Had to be done quicker and faster and better. And that's how you learned. Now, that was never my vibe to pass on to people I worked with down the road. Some people really keep that cycle going. They go, well, this is how I learn. This is how you're going to learn. That just wasn't my vibe. That's why I'm so unbelievably easy to get along with. People think I'm a prick. I am the furthest thing from a prick.
And you don't even have any carts to throw at us anyway.
That's what you think.
That's right.
You took me over to Heinen's,
I think at a certain
threw
point,
me in a cart, pushed me into the East
but then I
Knife.
pushed you around and we had fun.
Well,
I was
like
doing wheelies.
Stuff like that
and-
happens over on the east side.
Rascaling around on the east side.
Yeah. So, but that could never happen now. Because you don't know who you're dealing with. Like, you just have to be a cool guy and, unless you were working with people that were your age, unless you were working with people who came up the same way you did and they kind of understood. But you just can't take that chance. So it's like if you're doing a cartoon and you're working with a bunch of young animators
And writers and stuff.
and
too.
writers and
Yeah.
everything, all the creative people, I mean, things move on and you're not going to be hiring 50-year-old guys to script your cartoon. So you have to, that would be a real hard transition for people who operated that way for a long, long time. But back in the day,
Is Dan Harmon an older guy?
He's probably
he's
50.
mid-40s,
Yeah.
I think, yeah. But it's like back in the day, it wasn't even, because all of us in those positions, if we all got together or whatever, we all had the same war stories.
Yeah, he's 50 years old.
We were all working for different hosts. But everybody, it was early 90s. Everybody was throwing stuff and screaming because they wanted things the way they wanted them to be. They weren't calling you names, or it was just, I need this now. You're like, okay. And you wanted to do well because you wanted to, earn your keep. But things do change. And so I feel the pain of older people who are kind of like, these goddamn kids, man, you say anything to them and they get all weepy. And I feel their pain. But the bottom line is that's what it is. So you can't just ignore where
I think
a group of people are coming from.
I mean, I saw that a lot with my dad this isn't show business, but on a construction site, he was yelling at people constantly. And I got yelled at all the time by him and other guys. And it was just, and I probably got it less because I was the boss's son, but I still hated it and didn't want, I was like, oh, this is terrible. Why would I ever want to do this job?
Well,
So I got out of that business as fast as I could. He wanted me to take over the business. I'm like, no, it makes you a miserable person. Why would I want to do this?
Yeah.
like my first job outside, well, I guess it wasn't really outside of high school. I had a carpentry job. I had an apprenticeship, and I was working under this guy. And again, my teacher really liked me. He wanted to give me like a chance and prove myself, and I wanted to prove myself too because I had some things to prove to myself. And so we go out to this job site, first time working in carpentry, and it was so, I hated it so much, but I didn't want the owners to know that. And he just yelled and screamed, and like I just took it because I already had like low self-worth. So him yelling at me actually kind of made me feel good because I'm like, oh, this is what I've been feeling on the inside for so long. Now it's manifesting.
Someone recognizes
It was because like you feel like you need to be
This
punished.
guy's going to make me feel like a scumbag, and I love it.
So he was like punishing
Tell me I'm
me.
filthy.
Yeah, and he was just like, oh my God, you're awful. You never give me things here fast enough. Who taught you? Blah, blah. He would just scream in my face. And then by the end of it, I only worked for him for maybe like 4 days because then I went to like summer camp. I only worked for him for like 4 days, and it was 4 agonizing days. And by the end of it, he was like, you were one of the most respectful people I've ever met in my entire life. He was like, he was like, you can't, I'm not going to say what he said, but he said, you can't work worth a shrimp. Or he said, you can't be a carpenter worth a shrimp, but you're one of the most respectful people I've ever met in my entire life. And your generation, I lost hope, but he was like, you're no sissy. And I was like, I got it from like the meanest person I've ever met that I'm no sissy. That's all I needed. And I was off to summer camp, and I was like, I'm not going to be a carpenter, but I'm no sissy. So 4 days of just
And then you showed him.
You became.
That guy told me I wasn't a sissy.
But and I thought it was literally just me. I was like, wow, he really hates me. Like, this dude is just on one. And then my friend ended up working for him like the next summer, And she was like, I don't understand you. She's like, I don't understand how you tolerated that. I was like, I was only there for 4 days. She's like, he's awful. She was like, I quit on the spot. He was, and she was a good carpenter. She was a great carpenter. So I was like, oh man. So it wasn't just me. So all his words just like didn't mean anything. I wasn't that respectful because he would just yell at me and I would just take it. And I'm just like, whatever, man. I'm just going to do my thing, do the best I can because my mom told me to be always respectful.
I got in trouble. I worked in the foundation room at House of Blues, and there was, I mean, you're talking about that demographic. Older men with a lot of money was a lot of the demographic up there. And if they would talk to me like that or be pissy about the way their drink was made or something like that, I would snap back at them. So if they were rude to me, I'd have something to say. And I had several talkings to in my boss's office where he's like, you cannot talk to people this way.
Right.
Like, they are the customer, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, but he's being rude. He called me incompetent for not making his Negroni the way that he wants it, blah, blah, blah. He's like, they pay a lot of money to be here.
Yeah.
He's a 70-year-old man who's been drinking a Negroni every day for 50 years, you know. I was like, whatever. You're not gonna treat me that way. You're not gonna dehumanize me because I didn't put enough ice in your drink.
This is supposed to be 1 part gin. What is this, 3 parts gin?
Right. This is ridiculous.
The worst Negroni I've ever had. Where's the Campari?
It's also one of those things where, you know, I remember moments where my kids saw me in a stressful situation and, you know, whether it was driving and someone cut me off or something like that, or someone got her order wrong, and I was very calm about it, and that stuck with them. They're like, okay, we treat people in the service industry with respect. We treat, you know, we don't road rage because that doesn't lead to anything good. It's pointless. And I don't think they're perfect when it comes to road rage. I think they got a little bit of that, but they at least understand, like, I'm not someone that yells if I don't have to.
Right.
Well, I just think from like my experience growing up with the whole gay thing and like the black thing, I knew I was already like a double minority. So coming into this thing, I was like, what are they going to say that hasn't already been said? There's nothing like, especially if I was dealing with like low self-esteem, they're not going to say anything that makes me feel any lower about myself. So in a way, it kind of, in an objective way, it kind of prepared me for what was to come. Because people say stuff to me all the time and they're like, I can't believe like people speak like that. I'm like, oh yeah. They treat me like a lower life form. But I was like, but I'm not. And they're just jelly.
Show some RESPICT.
Alan, my dad told me about an old boss he had. My dad was behind in a deadline, and his boss threatened to bend him over the copier and butt F him.
Oh.
If you don't have this on my desk tomorrow, I'm going to bend you over that copier. He's like, what? How is that? What? Yup.
That's just the boss's fantasy. Just gets real. And
So you
detailed.
better be late.
Yeah, he's like, please don't make the deadline.
Yeah.
Please don't make the deadline. I don't care what happens. Please don't make the deadline. I'm going to have that copier repairman in here, and he's going to watch. I got to take a break. Want to get the last word in? Send me a text, 35192, 630. Next chance for you to grab some money. Next keyword to go fund yourself, so keep your ears open for that. Cavs tonight, 7:30 in New York to play the Knicks. 7 o'clock is when that pregame gets going here on the Buzzard.
It's the Alan Cox Show.
On our free iHeartRadio app and your